Hello, welcome to my YouTube video. I'm doing a review on two rimfire rifles. I've been shooting with these two rifles for a little bit and had some experience on them and wanted to share that with people. The review is basically for someone who's looking to buy a rimfire, has not decided on which one they want or which caliber they want. I would like to show the features of both rifles and share my experiences, what I've found with them and what I think of them, and hopefully it might help someone make a decision on what they might want to buy. So I've got two rifles that I'm comparing, if you like, with each other, doing a bite-sized review. One's a Browning 52, and one is an Anschutz 1517. Now, the main difference between these, in my opinion, is that one's made in Japan and the other's made in Germany. So the Anschutz at the bottom is made in Germany, and the Browning at the top has been made in Japan. In my opinion, Japanese and German engineering is pretty good, world class. It's among the top sort of engineering in the world from my experience. The Japs and the Germans just know how to make things, and they do a bloody good job of it, excuse my French. So yeah, they're both bolt action. They've both got fairly similar lengths, overall lengths. The Anschutz at the bottom, that's got a 17.5-inch barrel. The Browning at the top has got an 18.5-inch. I'd say sort of optimum sort of favourite barrel length for the 22LR is 16-inch, so maybe the Browning's a little bit longer than your average 22LR. The same token, the optimum length on a HMR I would consider to be about 18 inches, so it's half an inch short of the optimum on the Anschutz 1517 at the bottom there. So yeah, I would also consider them kind of a target stroke hunting rifle, both of them. They're kind of a hybrid. Both rifles have heavier barrels, so they're not sporting barrels and they're not kind of really heavy barrels. Like I've had a CZ 452 HMR with an American sort of varmint barrel, and the barrel is really thick and heavy. So these aren't quite as wide a barrels in diameter and as heavy, but they're nearly. So there's somewhere between a sporting barrel and a really heavy varmint barrel, which is why I think they're kind of a hybrid rifle. I think talking about the barrels, I'd consider both barrels to be absolutely supremely accurate for rimfires, because rimfires are not as accurate as centerfires generally. The one at the top, the Browning 52, that will return sort of three quarter of an inch group at 100 yards quite regularly. It's been, sometimes I've been shooting at 120 yards and you'll get three shots that will go into sort of quarter of an inch, and then you'll get one shot that flies off about half, three quarters of an inch, and brings the group out to say an inch or three quarters of an inch. So at the end of the day, it's the 2.2 ammunition that's really not that consistent. It's certainly not as high quality as some really well reloaded centerfire ammunition. So at the end of the day, it's £5 UK for a box of 50, so what do you expect? And these are Ely Subsonics. I find them to be quite consistent and very accurate, the most accurate rimfire cartridge I've found in my particular barrel. So I would highly recommend Ely Subsonics to try in your rifle, at least for a trial, and Winchester hollow point Super X. So yeah, the Browning barrel is supremely accurate for a rimfire. It's very rare you get 2.2 rimfires shooting sort of I mean, I've got on video, it shoots sort of 0.6 of an inch on a YouTube video, in my first video, and yeah, you don't see many rimfires shooting like that at all. I had an Anschutz semi-auto initially before this, and that was sort of doing 3-inch groups at 60 yards, so go figure. But, you know, obviously a different class of rifle, rimfire rifle. Moving on to the Anschutz, again, barrel, German engineering, German barrel. It's going to be absolutely fantastic, and it is. The guy I bought it off has proven that on YouTube that it's supremely accurate. You know, he was getting 1/2-inch groups at 100 yards with it, so the only thing is the shooter and the wind, really, and the quality, the HMR rounds, which are, you know, they're going to be better than a 2-2 rimfire round, no doubt, but they're not as good as a well-loaded centerfire in terms of consistency and quality, in my opinion, but they're pretty good. And these are Hornaday ballistic tip. They seem to perform really well in this barrel. I'm hoping to eventually get some groups down to below 1/2-inch, but you know, I'd say that this one's shooting 1/2-inch to 3/4-inch groups. So yeah, the barrels on them both, Japanese and German barrels, I suppose, they're just supreme barrels. Yeah, the stocks, obviously the Sporter stock for the 2.2 at the top, and then there's a Thummel stock for the 1.7 HMR at the bottom, which is walnut, and then the top one's beech. The stock on the Anschutz is very light compared to the Browning. Browning's a bit heavier, and I would say that aids in accuracy a little bit if you've got a bit more weight. The actions in the actual barrels are similar weight, so with the stock of the Anschutz being lighter, the gun is overall a lighter gun, easy to carry up hills, but you know, maybe not as forgiving, maybe. Yeah, so the stocks are nice, they're both nice. You don't want to scratch either of them, even though the bottom one's a walnut. I would say that the cheek piece here, this does help if you've got a high mount, because the last thing you want is your head and your eye to be down and your scope line to be high up, because you're straining in your shooting position and it's not going to help with your accuracy. So it's nice to see this ridge here, and it does help, but strangely enough I find that the sporting stock fits me better personally, but that's my own sort of, you know, my own personal fit. I also find that on the Anschutz that the actual when you get your thumb in, I can really put my finger right over the trigger, whereas it really should be just on the end of the pad. So I find this thumb hole is quite small. You know, it's kind of like made for a small hand, like a big child's hand, I suppose, but I find it's a bit of a small grip, really. Again, on the 2.2 LR, it's a bit different on the Browning. It's got a bit more substance and diameter to the actual stock, so getting your finger, it does actually, for me anyway, it fits a bit better. But yeah, the main thing for me is that the stocks are a different weight. It doesn't really matter to me that they're different, you know, one's walnut and one's beech. It's not really an issue to me. It's more the weight that aids in the accuracy, and it's not so heavy that you're having to carry it and getting tired, because it's not really a super heavy gun. It's got a nice bit of checkering there on the 2.2 and on the fore end and underneath. The stock is really nice on the 2.2, equally so on the HMR walnut stock. Nice bit of checkering there, and again checkering around the thumb hole, which helps with your grip. I mean, if you notice just little finishes like they've put a bit of metal on there on the 2.2, you can see the level of finish and the money they've spent on this, which I consider a supreme piece of kit for a 2.2 rimfire. I mean, they just don't make them in this quality anymore. I don't think you can get hold of this rifle anymore, this 2.2. I think they stopped making them, but Browning sort of manufacturing won't be as good as this was, you know. I don't think. I think the new Brownings are not as high quality as this. Made in Japan. Yeah, fantastic. One of the most important things for me is the trigger. So I'll start with the Anschutz. £2 to £4 basic set trigger. The basic trigger weight on them. It's not a set trigger, sorry. It's pretty heavy actually for a rimfire. Anyway, I think it's quite a heavy trigger. Some say it's a really fine trigger. Well, I don't rate it because I'm comparing it against this gun, and that trigger is absolutely amazing. So going back to the Anschutz, it's pretty light now because I've adjusted it, but it's down to about just under £1, which I find is okay. It's fine. Just reusing this cartridge, but I've got a dual trigger on my centerfire, and that, you know, it cost me a fair bit. It goes down to sort of 3 ounces and up to sort of £4, and has 3 spring options, and that is a nice trigger. It's on a par with this rimfire, would you believe, this 2.2 trigger. But the Anschutz trigger on this, I think they could have done a lot better. And if I was going to upgrade anything on any of my rifles, and I had some money to spend to upgrade if I needed to, then this would be the trigger I would upgrade, if it was available, you know. So yeah, the trigger on that, £2 to £4 standard setting, but I've tweaked mine. I would recommend you get a qualified gunsmith to do yours if you can have a play with it. It's just I'm an engineer, so it kind of helps. And I've tested it extensively. Going on to the Browning 2.2, the trigger on the Browning just breaks like glass. It's just supreme. There's not much travel at all on my particular setting. It's just one of the best triggers I've ever felt, let alone on a rimfire. Just one of the best triggers I've ever used. And it can be set without actually taking the action out of the stock. So listen so you can hear it. It breaks like glass. I've got this finely tuned at 8 ounces, so if you can listen to this, if you can hear it. It's just phenomenal. It's just like breaking a piece of tiny glass, and you know exactly when it's going to break, and it's almost like they couldn't do a better job of making a trigger. So if I was being really picky, I'd have to say that the Browning takes it on the trigger front over most, well, pretty much all rifles I've ever tried in terms of quality and in terms of accuracy. What the trigger does for you as a shooter to get the accuracy you want, the Browning takes the trigger easily. Onto the bolt on the Browning, it lets you down a bit, because if I put, I mean, these mounts on this 5.5 to 25 by 50 Falcon Menace first focal plane scope, the mounts on that are not particularly high, but when you put them on the Weaver mounts I've put on this, I don't know if you can see those Weaver mounts there, they are reasonably high, and this only just clears the tube of the scope and the back of the scope. And on lower mounts, say a medium mount for example, that hits the scope. So that is a bad point for this Browning, that bolt is really high up at a high angle, like, I don't know, 60 degrees, as opposed to, if you look at the Anschutz, it's lower. It doesn't catch the scope at all. So that is one thing to consider when you, well, if you ever see one of these second hand, let's put it that way. There's an issue there with the bolt, and I'm sure on cheaper scopes, like for example really cheap Hawk scopes, with that knocking the scope, sometimes it can just move your zero off a little bit if you knock it as you cock the spring. So that's an issue to cover. So I've looked at the barrels, I've looked at the triggers, the stocks. Yeah, I think that's about covered all of it really. You know, as a summary, just to give you some kind of idea. But if you really want to get the most out of sort of shooting, hunting, but you want to be really quiet, then the 2.2 will really do a great job for you on, say, rabbits or crows. I mean, I'm shooting rabbits and crows out to a maximum of sort of 150 yards with this and getting clean kills, so it's by no means a rubbish tool. It really does the business. But the Anschutz, it's if there's low wind, or if you can read the wind very well, which it is a challenge with both of them reading the wind. So if you've got a 10 mile an hour wind and you're shooting at a target sort of 140, 150, you've really got to read the wind. But if you can read the wind, or if it's a very still day, then the Anschutz is going to take small game out at, say, 200-ish yards, you know, maybe over 200 yards if you do your part. So got a Wildcat Whisper, Cal specific, that goes on the HMR, and it's short, very short. It's a reflex over barrel mod. It's very quiet, very, very quiet, and very short. It's brilliant. They're both 1/2 inch UNF by 20. The actual magazines on them, the Browning is only a 5-shot mag, so there is an issue there of, do I have enough rounds when I'm hunting? You can buy a 10-shot mag, but it's a Winchester 52, so it's a different branded mag, but you can buy a 10-shot. But the 5-shot indicates to me that this is actually a target pedigree rifle. 5 shots meant for target shooting. You know, maybe it had it did have a longer barrel. The Countryman of Derby cut it down before they sold it to me. It was 22 inch, I think, and I would imagine it was using iron sights as well, as opposed to scope mounted, possibly, hence the bolt being high, possibly. Again, magazine capacity on the Anschutz 15-17 is 4 shots, and it's a bit tricky to get it out with one hand. You've got to keep the catch held down while you get the mag out. But the mag seems sound as a pound really. It's alright. 4 shots though. You just get 4 shots. So you might want more mags, or if you're hunting for example, or you might want a 10-shot mag. I don't know if you can get a 10-shot for it yet. Not sure. But all in all, 2 very fine guns. Again, Japanese and German engineering. The barrels on these guns are particularly fine, you know, returning sort of 1/2 inch and 3/4 inch groups at 100 yards, so for a rimfire I can't complain at all. So if you're thinking about buying a rimfire, or if you're thinking about, do I buy a 2.2 or 1.7 HMR, and I haven't covered something in this mini review comparison, then put a message in and I'll try and answer any questions you've got. Okay, thanks, bye.